Hey guys, welcome to BP the Bible Perspective. I want to dissect a video that was produced by Prageru defending the statue of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Video says things such as Robert Lee was awesome. Worse, slavery was good for black people. So let's dive into this. But before we do, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Now, the conservative, Prageru, it's short for Prager University, but it is not a university. It is a 501c3 non-for-profit advocacy group that produces videos, short videos, on social issues, political issues, economic issues from an American conservative viewpoint. Now that's important. From an American conservative. I like to also say from a white Christian point of view. In other words, the conservative movement today of the white Christian evangelicals primarily seek to build not the kingdom of God, but a white Christian nation, that they think God is for this nation. I mean, to build this nation next to Israel. Now, Dennis Prager doesn't necessarily call himself a Christian. I think he's more Jewish than anything else. And I'm not going to get too much into that because I want to get more into his video that he did of Robert E. Lee. But we need to understand the motive, what's behind producing this video. Conservatives join forces, whether they're Christian conservative or just secular conservative, so they could be pretty much on any spectrum of life, but what they unite mostly over is their conservatism. Now, what is also behind conservatism is racism. So they don't like to be identified as racist, which is always funny to me because what they say is racist, and you will hear it from this video. They don't like to be called racist. They don't mind being racist. They just don't want to be called racist. Dennis Prager is the one who started this university. He received millions of dollars to produce these videos, and it works because they reach millions of viewers. So this is an extremely successful venue right here. Now, the video highlights what they're complaining about is the taking down of Confederate statues, and chiefly General Lee. Now, I'm going to let the video speak mostly for itself. The problem, of course, with Prageru videos is that they distort the truth. They hide the truth. In other words, they don't say everything. And as I said, they reach millions of conservatives. So it is very effective. So let's get into the let me just say this before I get into the video. Robert E. Lee was the Confederate general, and just so you know, he led the Confederacy. He was general of the Confederacy, right? Now understand, he was a traitor to the United States. The Confederacy was a traitorous movement, and he led the army that he sought by force to overthrow the government of the United States. One of his chief reasons, the preservation of slavery. Now they would say states' rights, but understand states' rights to have slaves. Robert E. Lee himself was a notorious racist, a cruel racist, slave owner, But like a lot of people of his day, there were a lot of cognitive dissonance going on with him. So, for example, he thought the institution of slavery was bad, but thought blacks were inferior, and certainly that blacks should not mingle with whites. He thought that they were inferior to whites. Okay, and then, like I said, he owned slaves, and he was known to be a cruel to his slaves as well. So that was also part of that. Now, I want to say, sure, I'm kind of going through all this because um, um, when we say we're going to honor a person, but yet you don't tell the entire truth, and that's what's going on here with this video. Okay. As I said, he was cruel to his slaves. He would whip them, beat them, but let's get into the video and let's dissect it as we go. The Prageru video. Okay, here we go.
Elite. Statues of great historical figures, like Robert E. Lee, are being torn down across America. Here are some facts about Lee that remind us why his statue should remain.
Okay, now the first thing he says was statues of historic figures are being torn down. Okay, true. But understand that these statues, the Confederate statues, most of them were erected decades after the ending of the Civil War in 1865. There are some 1,700 Confederate flags throughout the nation, mostly in the South. There are kind of two periods in which you saw this kind of eruption of these, erecting of these statues. One during the time, probably around the 1920s, when you had one of the greatest number of the Ku Klux Klan throughout the nation. And the second was around the 50s, when you had the opposition against the civil rights movement. Now keep that in mind. Some of the influences were people like the groups such as the Daughters of the Confederate, which impact is felt today in public schools and school books. All of these things in a direct effort to control the narrative about how the South is viewed. Okay, the curriculum, as I said, in a lot of schools is reshaped, and in some cases just outright lies. Okay, and as we're going to see, just get the taste of it with this video. So when we talk about Confederate statues, and one of the arguments is that, well, you know, you're taking the history away. Now that's simply not true, because first and foremost, statues don't tell history. Statues are designed to honor. In this case, with the Confederate statues, they retell and reshape and repaint the narrative. That's why they're calling them heroes, not traitors. They don't tell the story. There are certain sites, right? For example, Nazi in camps and things like that that are still erect. If you go and you see these sites, you're going to walk away not glorifying Nazism, but you're going to walk away with a profound sadness that history occurred that way. Now, the Confederate statues, on the other hand, are designed to retell the history and to make these traitors that, by the way, affected the most deadliest war, the most brutal war fought on American soil. Over 600,000 soldiers died in an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. We could also say this: had they won, how would America be today? All right, let's continue.
Robert E. Lee was connected to George Washington through his father, Light Horse Harry Lee, Washington's cavalry commander, and his wife, Martha Washington's great-granddaughter. Lee's home at Arlington House was just 10 miles from Washington's Mount Vernon. Today, it is the site of Arlington National Cemetery.
Okay, now this has absolutely nothing to do with why a statue should be erected to him. Whatever connection he may or may not have had to Washington has nothing to do with anything. So why are they bringing this up? I don't know. Let's continue.
After 30 years of military service, Lee led U.S. Marines to crush the attempted slave rebellion by radical abolitionist John Brown in October 1859.
Now this is astonishing because what he is honoring is a slave revolt rebellion. The crushing of a slave revolt. Now notice the term abolitionist. They were those who fought against the institution of slavery. He's bragging, they're glorifying that he crushed that. Now, remember, Lee was a racist. He was a slave owner. He was, when I say a racist, he was a racist in the most cruel way. He was cruel to his slaves. So now here's Prageru saying, hey, he crushed the abolitionists, those who fought for slavery. This is what they're honoring. This is not even a dog whistle. But it gets worse. Let's continue.
21 co-conspirators had seized a federal armory, and all of them were killed or captured, including John Brown, who was tried and hanged for treason.
Now, this is an amazing statement here because, according to this history here, John Brown, who led the rebellion to end slavery, right? He led that. He was tried, he was captured, tried. Now watch this, and hanged for treason. Now what is amazing is that Robert E. Lee, who led a rebellion to overthrow the government of the United States. Now John Brown didn't try to overthrow the government of the United States, but Robert E. Lee tried to overthrow the government of the United States, caused the most bloodiest war. Over 600,000 soldiers died. He wasn't hanged for treason. Now note the irony. Let's continue. But notice that here, by the way, notice that Prageru is glorifying this act. Let's continue.
Lee deemed slavery a moral and political evil in any country, but considered it a greater evil to the white man than to the...
I just have to kind of cut in here. I'm going to back up and play it all, but this is a true statement. He did consider slavery bad, but notice, a greater evil than, to the white man. Think about that. A greater evil to the white man. That's amazing. But it gets a lot worse. Let's continue.
Lee deemed slavery a moral and political evil in any country, but considered it a greater evil to the white man than to the black race, since blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa.
Yes, he just said that blacks are better off here than in Africa. Do you know a lot of people think that today? A lot of white people think that today, that blacks are better off here in America as slaves than they were in Africa. Let's examine that for a moment. Let's just say, because a lot of people think that, well, Africa, the dark Africa with the darkies, that they just kind of running around naked with bones in their noses swinging from trees. You got people that actually believe that. And remember, they believe that they're apes. They believe that they're animals. But what they're kind of saying is that, and Lee believed this, that it was better for the white man to buy slaves, chain them, put them chain them in the bows of ships for the Atlantic crossing, and then sold as animals oftentimes naked, the women raped, but sold, and oftentimes separated from their families, children sold away from their families, treated as slaves, whipped as slaves. Remember, Lee was a cruel slave master, and yet they says, well, blacks are better off here. I think I would rather swing naked with a bone in my nose from Africa and be free than to be a slave here. But this is the conditioning that you see that Prageru is continuing. This started back in slavery to justify the existence of slavery, to justify the morality of the white Christians who own slaves. But you see, this mentality still exists. The conditioning, what Prageru is trying to do is to condition people that, hey, how we view black people as inferior. Let's honor these people. Let's continue.
Opposing secession, Lee foresaw no greater calamity for the country than a dissolution of the Union. But when Virginia seceded in a close vote, Lee resigned his commission. Despite offers to command Union forces, Lee opted to organize the defense of his native state.
Okay, yes. Lee was offered a position in the Union states, but he chose the rebellion. Let's keep that in mind now. He chose the rebellion. And this is the statue we want to honor. Let's continue.
After 4 years as Confederate commander, Lee became an icon of reconciliation upon his surrender. As president of Virginia's Washington College, he favored education for freed slaves but opposed their right to vote.
All right, that's enough. I'm going to stop it here. But notice he said that he opposed their right to vote. Now, why did he oppose their right to vote? Because he was a racist. And this idea that he was in, he wanted to, he was an icon, of reconciliation, begged to differ. 600,000 soldiers died under his command. In other words, if he was such an icon of reconciliation, why did you have the need for the reconciliation in the first place? This idea that, remember, he led a rebellion that led to that. Now, when it came down to the end of the war, the South lost horribly. That's what the problem is. They saw no other way to win. My criticism is oftentimes that with Lincoln and some of the Union states, they were too lenient on these traitors. But one of the reasons why they were lenient is because they wanted the nation to heal and move on. And I'm going to say they did that at the expense of black people, but that's another lesson. The point is that they wanted to have statues honoring this, but they don't want to tell the whole story, see? I'm not against having statues, but tell the truth. In other words, the history books should tell us what history are. When you erect a statue, you're honoring people. And in this case, you're honoring traitors. Would we have a statue? Would you like a statue for Hitler? Honoring Hitler? How about Stalin? How about Putin today? Right? Even though some people on Dennis Prager's side are doing just that, aren't they? Praising Putin, but that's another story. I think is that here is the reason why you have this retelling of story is to perpetuate the conditioning of certain people a certain way. And that's why, and that's what's dangerous about this. Look, guys, that is my perspective. Love to hear your opinions and your thoughts. Add it to the comments section. And remember, all comments are welcome. And don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Till next time, I'll see you then.